Before sharing my screen with the work, I do want to thank Tides Institute and Museum of Art. I am honored to be here. I was honored to be selected. I knew nothing about them. All I knew is they were in this little island in Maine on the border of Canada. I've never been here before, and it's been a real joy. It's really opened my mind, my heart, and I wish it had opened my body, but it hasn't opened my body. But my mind and heart, you know, and my soul, those are the main parts that I resonate with. So I'm going to share my screen and tell you what I've been up to. And for the most part, I am going to talk about process, sort of a narrative of the last 4 weeks, really 3.5 weeks, because I've been winding down this week. So bear with me for a moment while I share what I've got here. Okay, okay, so I was asked to show a little bit of my work that I've done prior to coming to Tides. I'm going to use the name Tides to indicate the StudioWorks Artist in Residence program. So what I'm showing you now is a drawing that I'm going to show you a few drawings that I've worked on this spring, and you might recognize some of the imagery. None of this was designed to comment on COVID necessarily, but once COVID hit, it really seemed to resonate with people. I've been working with viruses for a few years, not just viruses, but microscopy, and Heidi's here, can probably correct my pronunciation for any of this, but scanning electron microscopes that can get into an incredible deep visualization of the body or plants. And so I focus on microbes in particular. And in this earlier work, it's hard to believe that the spring would be earlier work, but I also added a few other elements like blood cells and sometimes drawings that I created and then rephotographed. I just want to point this out to Kristen because this little shape right here happens to be a bacteria that was discovered in Maine. And this is the bacteria I actually sent in my proposal because it's a bacteria that has been found to not mutate. And they think it might be the next sort of penicillin, you know, it's going to be this bacteria that, since it doesn't mutate, that the viruses can't become, or the bacteria rather, can't become resistant to it. So I've put various elements into these drawings, and these drawings are 18 inches by 24 inches. So again, I'm going to point out just elements from previous drawings, as well as some lung material, and in fact, some computer-generated representations of viruses, which are pretty well known at this point. It's what we all see in the media when people refer to the COVID-19. That isn't the real virus. That's just a computer or artist rendition of the virus, which, you know, when you see something that doesn't look, it's biomorphic in shape, but it's not based in, it's not reality. I actually did not put the actual COVID in here, but when I show that to people, they're really mostly shocked that, oh, it doesn't look like the real thing. So these are the works that I submitted in order to be selected to come up here. And I'm going to go into, for those who don't know this area, a map of where we are. So, oops, let me go back. So this is Eastport. This is where we are. It's an island. It's Moose Island. Eastport is the town. I guess, you know, there's a year-round population of 12 to 1,300. And this is the border of Canada. These are Canadian islands on this side, and this is the area, the peninsulas, and this is the Cobb's Cook Bay, and this is the Passamaquoddy Bay here. Pleasant Point is where the Passamaquoddy reservation is, who were the indigenous people who lived here before the probably mostly Anglo-Saxons came and stole the land, just to be, blunt about it. But I wanted to show this map because this is not an environment I'm used to. And what I realized in looking at this map is that some of my work kind of represents these islands. So I kind of made this picture here. This is, I'm going to show you what this is based on. This is another drawing slash collage. I call them drawings because collage is a method, and so when I say what the materials are, I usually say graphite and paper on paper, which is basically the materials that I use. So I collage things and then draw into the negative space, but also into the positive space. So I just want to go back to this this rendition I did from that drawing. It looks like a bunch of islands, and I realized I intuitively make compositions that look like these islands. It looks very much like the northeastern, or as it's referred to here, down east Maine. So there's my islands. And when I first got here, I hadn't really talked to any of the scientists I was going to talk to. So I took some photographs of low tide. Low tide is my favorite time here because there's about a 26-foot tide difference between low tide and high tide, or it can be that way. I've noticed that it varies quite a bit day to day, but this is what I first saw. This is the town of Eastport over here, and this is the in low tide, all the algae or the seaweed that remains in low tide. Some people actually harvest that, and as well as other seaweeds in the area. But I really loved these images of the seaweed. And so what I did is I made copies of that, and my first drawing was based on the seaweed. So these are just images of the seaweed that I photocopied and collaged onto this. Again, it's 18 inches by 24 inches. And I kind of put some of these elements, these body elements into the collage to give it some variety. So then I was able to speak to a couple of scientists, and I wanted to actually thank them because they were really inspiring and informative. I spoke with Heidi Layton, who's here in the audience. She's a marine biologist who grew up in the area and that worked for also the Cobb's Cook Bay Resource Center at one point, worked at the Pleasant Point Indian Reservation, and now works for the Maine Department of Marine Resources in shellfish management. And I just got a tremendous amount of information from her about the marine phytoplanktons in the area and what is a source of concern in the marine area, in the bays, and what kind of phytoplanktons can be found. I then spoke to Elizabeth Hopkins, and she's the one that works at the Cobb's Cook Bay Resource Center. So this is their website, and they have these pictures of the phytoplanktons that they've photographed. So here's one called the Gyrosigma, and this is basically, how I do my research. I look at what these microscopic, microbiological critters. They're animals. They're really animals, and they actually each have DNA, which is fascinating. That's a whole talk from a scientist in and of itself. But I've learned so much from both Elizabeth Hopkins and Heidi Layton. And then I started making these collages based on those images. Not just the ones that you saw on the computer, but I noted the two most egregious animals, as it were, in the area that will cause pink tide and a buildup, which then creates a imbalance of the whole ecosystem. And I don't know if you know this or not, but 50% of our oxygen that we breathe comes from these microcosms. So here's another collage. The one I just showed, I'm trying to move my cursor, there we go. The one I just showed is one that I've more or less completed and drawn into. So that gives you an idea of what it looks like. I haven't finished this one that you see here. These are also both 18 by 24 inches. Those are those two compositions. Again, downloading images based on the names of the phytoplankton, the phytoplasma, the phytoplankton that they told me about, the two scientists told me about. So my offspring told me, oh, you should work big, you have walls, you have a studio. And so that's what I did. I started playing around. Now this is not large, this is small, but I started playing around with ink. I brought some ink up and just did some abstract, kind of getting used to the medium, and did some drawings with ink. And then I made some larger drawings on this butcher block paper. Butcher block paper because I haven't used that wet medium for so long. I thought I'd play around with it, and I took these are all representations of one of the phytoplankton that is found, and these are different variations of them. So these are a couple of close-ups of those paintings. And here's a photo of evening is coming upon us, and this is a work table that I worked on, and that's looking out the window to the town. Then I got into, because of those ink drawings, I got into adding these drawn elements and creating these. These are in progress. They're not completed, but the composition is completed. And I started making this kind of faux frame around. These are larger. These are about 23 by 34 inches. So I cut out the parts of the painting that I had done and added those to the frame. And I like it. To me, it feels like it gives it a little bit of whimsy. It's a little bit referencing folk art or just something less scientific. And here's another one of that series. And finally, I got some real paper, some good 100% rag paper, and started doing these largish microcosmic, I'm losing my words, the photoplankton that you saw more or less surrounding these images, and doing these fairly large. This again is on the 18 inches by 24 inch paper. And what I'm going to do with these is add some color and some collage materials over top. But I wanted to share the studio and how the larger images compared to the smaller, the butcher block paper images. This is more or less in my studio near the end of the week. And these are some of the ink drawings I had done. And then I wanted to show you a little bit of these prints I made. These prints are, and I'll show them in a full slide in a moment, but these are Petri dishes, and these photographs are photographs I took at a museum in Amsterdam called Micropia. And the museum is the only museum in the world devoted entirely to microcosmic images. So it was a fascinating place to visit. And I love these images that I've printed here. I have a great printer here. And these are some that were in a jar that photographs I took inside the jar that I've printed. And then finally, this is my last day. I took this picture today, and that is the end of my talk. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Julie. My name is Hilary Lorenz, and I am incredibly happy to be here. And I want to thank about how I came here. I learned about the residency from a previous resident, Mike Marks, and sorry, I just had to let me back up. So I had learned about the residency previously. And in applying for it, I was doing research about Eastport, because whenever I go on a residency, or how I decide if I want to apply to a program, is I want to think about what can I only do at that place? Like, what is it specific about Eastport or about other places that I have been that I can really work off from this new environment? And one of the things in Eastport is the largest tidal whirlpool in the Western Hemisphere is here, and it's called the Old Sow. So when I wrote my proposal, it was about doing drawings, collage, prints about the Old Sow and about the water, the waterfront, and the community. My work historically is based in nature, and it's also very based in physical activity. So one of the first things I got here, I wanted to be able to go out kayaking, and I was immediately because I always run, so I was running when I got here. I was checking with Kristen about, do you know anyone who I can go out kayaking with? And of course she did. So she, was really instrumental in helping me, get set up and going in this residency. I want to show you a few background pictures. And just to give you an idea also of where we are. I took this photograph 10 minutes before the talk. So these are the two studios. I am on the left-hand side and Julie's on the right-hand side. So this is what it looks like at night. We have 24-hour access. They are really beautiful places to work, and I'll have a little bit more to show on that later. But when I arrived here, I live in Brooklyn, New York. I drove up to Eastport, and the tide was out. This was the first sign that I saw, and it was just this really exciting, entry into Eastport, which is on, as Julie had said, on Moose Island. This is a historic house where I am staying. So this was my first entry, of seeing where I was going to be living for the next 4 weeks. And this fisherman, this is kind of a funny statue. It was a movie prop, and it's right downtown. So every time I walk down from my house, I see the fisherman. But what was even more particular on that first day was there was a sign for the ferry that goes to Lubeck, which is just a little bit down the bay. And it had the price for passengers, the price for your bicycle, and dogs were free. So I'm like, I know this is a really good place because I can travel anywhere, you know, with my dogs, and it was free, even though I did not take them on the ferry. And the walk down from my house, this goes down a hill, and what you're looking at is Tides Museum when the sun is rising. So each morning I would get up, you know, I'd see the sun rising off the water, like I could see the water through the windows, and that the land line that you see by the roof, that's Canada. So Canada's right there. So when I'm working in the studio, I look out, I see the fishermen, and I see Canada. So I'm going to stop that slide there. I'll go back to them, but what I want to show you is I had a project, so I knew I was working on the Old South, and I had to make a contact of who would take me out in the boat, and one of the boat captains here, Butch, was like, yes, we'll look up the best time to take you out, and I knew it would be a few days, so I started on one of my other projects. And one of the projects was not specifically related to tides, but it was an incredible entry point into it. And that is this. So there's a group of us, in fact, some also in this Zoom, that are part of a portfolio project curated by Melanie Yazzie, who is she's an artist, and she's at the University of Colorado. And it was about, basically the directive is, what is your reaction to 2020? And it was very fast for me to know what it was, because I had been reading a book called Walking and Mapping, because this is something that I kind of do in my practice. And the word wayfinding kept coming up. And this wonderful direction of wayfinding, which is a consistent use and organization of definite sensory cues from the external environment. And that was it was actually written in a dissertation by someone by the name of Kevin Lynch, who's an urban planner. But, you know, essentially wayfinding is you're walking around, whether it's like physically walking or, you know, mentally on your day, and you're getting all this information that you know, we make choices, right? Whether it's about crossing the street, or whether it's, do I need to buy that new bicycle to commute with, or just, you know, personal day-to-day emotional things. And at different times and different intensities and levels of, you know, what was going on with COVID and what's known and what's unknown, there were times where wayfinding became almost impossible. Like I felt it was just too many decisions, too much, too fast, and it was like almost a shutdown. So it became this, you know, basically this web of information going all over the place. Because I was also working with water, I had made a linoleum block print of water. So I feel like the lines come together a little bit more in shapes. And there's a little boat right here you can see, and a little boat over here. Part of this was also a fantasy that 11 miles away by water, I have friends over in St. Andrews. I was, you know, thinking, oh, maybe we would see each other by the water. So even thinking about things like that, of putting into this. And then in the end, I have the definition, and there is a wonderful Vandercook 4 letterpress here. So I set the type for this by hand, and also the word wayfinding on the front is all wood type. So I had this wonderful opportunity to use a wood type, the metal type. I carved a lino cut, and then I also made a collograph plate. So this is what, you know, really got me started, and really basically, you know, also helped me find my way of where I was going. So the next thing that I was really thinking about was, you know, as I was waiting to go see the Big Sow, was I started carving water. Because when I look outside, I mean, that's all I see is water, right? So, and I have been drawing water for a little while. Actually, when I go back, and prior to coming here, I'm a artist in resident at the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council, Governor's Island. Governor's Island is located in New York Harbor, and it's a 2-mile around island. It's very small. And I was first there in 2016, and that's when I really started thinking more about my relationship to water and what it means. I think a lot of times, you know I didn't think about it beyond like, well, you drink water, I need water to wash, water to cook. In New York, that's when we started getting ferries. So it completely changed transportation. I also got really excited about making a boat, which I finally started doing. I'm in the process of building a 12-foot canoe in my apartment in Brooklyn. So I don't have the canoe here. But of thinking sort of symbolically, metaphorically, and of, what water means to me, whether it's transportation, recreation, and, making work based on that and my relationship to that. So going back here, whoops. So skipped around a couple. This is the inside of my studio where I'm looking out at the big fishermen. These are my helpers right here. That's Homer and Apollo that would hang out with me. This is a wonderful printing press donated by Nina Bolin, who I am incredibly grateful to. This is a beautiful press, and it just makes a space amazing. There are the boys. You got to see the boys because it's all part of my working. So this was the first time out on the kayak, and I was just a little bit south of Eastport. Really wonderful, windy day. We kayaked out to an island. We bushwhacked around on the island. These are like little things that I found. And basically I collect photographs mostly for inspiration. I don't necessarily draw them, but I might. It's more about, for me, the physical feeling, from activity. The physical feeling of, fighting the waves as I'm canoeing, or, fighting the wind, going to the island, walking through the island, and then just kind of holding those feelings. And I've done projects like that for several years. A couple years ago, I backpacked for an artist. The residency was actually backpacking and walking from the Klondike Gold Rush Trail, which starts in Alaska and goes to British Columbia. So it's, walking and moving around. And this is a picture of the seaweed. The seaweed here just blows my mind, how incredibly dense and colorful it was. So that first kayak trip really got me, started. And at one point I was sitting in the kayak, and I had already started carving the linoleum block. These are behind me. And I can pull this up closer. But I thought, and it was funny because somebody came by one day and they're like, it's a whole lot of lines. And I'm like, it is a lot of lines, and I need to have some more shapes in it. So I'm going to say in person, you can see the waves really moving. But I was sitting in the canoe, and all of a sudden I looked out and I'm like, the waves are going in every which direction. It's not an even movement. And I think that I know in my mind, I think about waves of being like kind of this long line that move. I grew up on Lake Michigan. So the Lake Michigan waves would be kind of one continuous wave. It wouldn't necessarily be choppy all over like in the smaller lakes around the river. So this was the first linoleum I did, 22 by 30 inches. And I finished this right after that first canoe trip. So, and then I continued to use that. I don't know where I put my other pin, so it can stay down. So I continued to use that on the front and back of some of the other pieces. Pieces of which, the ones that didn't quite work out, I started making these paper boats. So I have a whole variety of paper boats. And what was important to me in making these boats also is this is what I was going to do for my community project. And, you know, things changed a little bit because of COVID. You know, I couldn't invite a bunch of people here to the studio. So what I did was I made these little bags. And when you open the bag, you would get your directions of how to fold your boat. You would get directions on, you know, what would be the side of the boat and what would be the sail on the boat. And then everybody got 2 pieces of paper. So you get this like really, this marbled, really thin paper. And this is a mulberry paper. So a little thicker and heavier, little harder to fold, but you can have a much more substantial boat. They got some nice sparkly blue thread to hang them from. Stickers, I still have some stickers left, so I came here with 50 stickers. So if anybody's around and you want to come and get stickers before I leave, and then, you know, just my information, my business card. And so that was really fun to be able to make boats with people and, you know, keep this theme going of the project. But eventually we get to the big sow, which is very exciting. So this is a picture of the whirlpool. So what happens is when the high tide is coming in, it goes around Deer Island and the water comes around both sides. It comes to a point and it makes this incredible whirlpool. And I thought it was just gonna be one big giant one, but they're all over the place. So I had first read about it in Wikipedia and I survived the Old Sow. There's a group that if you make it out alive, you know, you can be part of the group because there are boats that have gone down. There was an entire sardine ship that went down, which was actually in the late 1800s. But in the 1940s, a boat went down as well. And I was asking Butch, the captain, about that, and he was saying it was biggest problem was how the boats were loaded. So I took several photographs of the whirlpool. It doesn't last long. So 2 to 3 hours before high tide is the best time to see it. And there's probably only about 20 minutes where it's the real height of it is going. And they just start and stop all around you. Like they're just, this is actually one of my favorite ones, and I'll show you a drawing in a few minutes that I'm working on, kind of based on that one. But here you can see like it just kind of starts to erupt. Here you can see a fishing boat right behind it to just give you a sense of the scale. And here the sense of, it's a little scary looking. It's not that scary looking when you're in the boat. But I couldn't help but think about when I was out west and watching and waiting for the geysers to come. And I'm like, oh, this is way better than geysers. This was too cool. But here you can see, you know, the people that are standing on the island and this whole entire area across here. And it can be 100 feet across. This whole entire area is just getting ready to go into a giant whirlpool. So they start, stop, and go back and forth. So I'm gonna flip that off again before I show you my next canoe trip. And so I made a smaller linoleum block of the whirlpool. And, you know, one of the most remarkable thing about being here is all the people that I've met. And I was actually joking with Kristen several times about how this entire town feels like a vortex. The first person I went kayaking with, who I'd never met, Mark Lee, turned out our studios are in the same exact building in Red Hook, Brooklyn. So neither of us are there any longer, but it turned out he was like my next door neighbor. And this is not a huge building. It's an old Civil War building, but there's only one section with artist studios, and there's only 8 studios on the floor. So 8 studios, you know, some people share. And the very first person I meet and go kayaking with was my next door neighbor. Not even a week later, when I was taking a ferry to Lubeck, someone comes up behind me, they're like, aren't you a printmaker from Red Hook? And I'm like, yes. And I thought maybe he saw, you know, like something that was happening at Tides. And he's like, I was at the studio, I was at door 14 studio at the same time you were there. So he was also in this building. And it was just kind of crazy to me. And then the number of people that I was meeting here that were connected to other people, some not, but also like I just made some like real friends here, and that was really incredible. And I just feel this sense of groundedness. Like the minute I got here, I felt the sense of groundedness. So I feel like, yes, there's this physical vortex going on out there, but then there's also this vortex that's happening like right here. So when I was drawing this, I'm like, well, you know, you can think of the vortex as a lot of different things. You know, is it scary? Is it exciting? Is it, you know, a few years ago, there was a polar vortex. But one of the definitions I found online was any activity, situation, or way of life regarded as irresistibly engulfing. And what I love about that is irresistibly engulfing can be taken in any way. Like irresistible is usually like, oh, like this chocolate is irresistible, I love this. But also some things that are not so great for us or may not even, you know, be positive can also be irresistibly engulfing. We just can't help ourselves. So this has been a irresistibly engulfing residency. I mean, just phenomenal. So I printed these on a couple of kinds of paper, just because I was, you know, I usually print quite a bit just to see, you know, which ones I like, and I actually like both of them. So I'm going to have two separate editions here. But again, the type I set by hand, and then it's a small linoleum block. So, you know, going back to, you know, why I choose places, and I also really want to get a much more sense about the place as well. So besides, you know, finding people to kayak with, I reached out. There's the Down East Conservancy. I had to think about that for a second. And they were hosting a kayak. So about 45 minutes south of here, it's called the Orange River. So we kayaked on the Orange River, and that was really interesting to see the Orange River compared to the bay because it was very weedy. It was a completely different landscape. Once we got there, you know, we were passing, there's like a lot of rocky areas. This is what it looks like around Eastport. And then this is from the top of Estes Mountain, and I'm looking down from the mountain onto, there were a lot of beaver dams that created all of these pools and water around there. And so I was going to save this one a little bit, but since I accidentally hit it, this is Eastport at night. This is phenomenal. Very often I'm at the studio until about 9 or 9:30, and the fog rolls in. There's not a car. Well, there is actually a car way back there, but usually like there's no cars. It's absolutely gorgeous and quiet, and you just hear the fog horns. And you know, I love being outside at night. And this is how the fisherman is looking at night. So, you know, he's the last thing I see before I leave the studio. So I want to show you the large drawing that I'm working on. Whoops, this one. And this will also give you a better sense of what it looks like where I'm working. Okay, so here's this, I'll try not to like move too fast. So here's the studio. And here is the large drawing that I'm working on. It still has a way to go. And I'm thinking about, how much collage am I going to do? How much, right now this is all watercolor. So that is the start of the Old South. And right now, what I really like about this is it's kind of very pretty watercolor, but it also looks like it can suck you in. so I like that. Here's a couple other projects I've been working on. Here's some watercolor. And now some of these I started before I came here, and then I finished them up when I was here. And that was my first Old South. But I really want to give you a sense of, what it's like where I'm at and where I'm working, so that it's just a really beautiful studio. And I get to look outside. I get to see, people are always walking by, and it's really fun to chit chat with people walking by. And I just want to, like, all the people from Eastport who may be on this, I just want to say thank you so much, and thank you for being such amazing hosts. I've had incredible dinners over with Victoria and Carl and Mary, meeting at the dog park, so my dogs have friends, and it's just been a wealth of just feeling welcome and really being able to come into the space and hunker down and work and be connected all at the same time. Because for me, it is really important to be connected. I'm able to work more, I'm able to work better, and I can hear people's stories and think about their stories and their relationship to living here, and how that might shape what I'm doing or what I'm thinking about. So I have, I did a few other experimentations, and one last thing that I want to show you is, once you set type, something this small doesn't take that long, but I always want to print extra. So I printed, I'm not sure how many extra, and then I was thinking more and more about the vortex. And so this is my plan with these. I am going to send them out to different artists, and so you can email me if you would like one. I'm going to send them out to different artists, and you can draw, paint, print, whatever you want, your own vortex here. I would like to leave some here for Eastport, for people in Eastport as well. However you interpret the vortex, is it like mine? I have the, the whirlpool, but it's also about this energy of, bringing everyone and connecting us together. So there's all these different sheets of paper. People can draw their own vortex, and then I would love if they would all send them back, and we could maybe find a place to show these, which could be a really fun collaborative project. So after just about 4 weeks, that is where I'm at. So thank you so much.